Hello, my name is Benjamin Hart. I'm an American attorney and the Managing Director of Integrity Legal here in Bangkok, Thailand. This video today is going to talk directly on the impact that the election and inauguration of President Trump, how that's going to impact the U.S. immigration process, at least in the foreseeable future. Please note at the beginning of this video, this is not a political video at all. This is not in any way meant to convey any sort of political message, nor is it intended to show any sort of political bias. This video is simply a legal analysis of the possible future implications of Trump's presidency and the administration of him and his administration on the U.S. immigration process moving forward. Today is January 28th, 2017. As of the time of this filming, there have been two fairly important executive orders pertaining to U.S. immigration and U.S. visa matters. It should be noted, just on a conceptual level or sort of from a broader perspective, unlike other areas of law, the president has rather a great deal of can have a great deal of personal impact upon the U.S. immigration process. First of all, immigration in any context touches on matters of sovereignty of a given nation state. So, although immigration operates under a rule of law, it often operates under a statutory scheme, as does the United States immigration system. It does touch upon matters of national security, and more importantly, it touches upon matters of national sovereignty. So, U.S. immigration matters, and the President of the United States has a great deal of power with respect to issues and matters of national security, and also has a great deal of, shall we say, leeway when it comes to matters involving foreign nations or relations between foreign nations. His or her, theoretically, powers with respect to dealing with foreign nationals and dealing with foreign nations are quite a bit broader than when dealing with U.S. citizens or domestic matters. So that's the first thing to keep in mind. Moreover, the second thing to keep in mind is very much like the sheriff of a county in a U.S. jurisdiction. The President of the United States isn't the executive. He's in charge of enforcing immigration law. And in a way, he has a great deal of power with respect to how he goes about enforcing immigration law. And if he views there to be a security threat, then his powers can be used in rather sweeping ways, quite frankly. So again, as of today, as of the time of this recording, it's important to note that we've only seen two major executive orders promulgated by President Trump, but one of them was pretty darn important. Noting from CNN on the 28th of January, that's today, 2017, CNNpolitics.com, a recent executive order, quote-unquote, bans all people hailing from Iraq, Syria, Iran, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Yemen. The nations list I just listed. Apparently, as of now, as of the time of this recording, visas will not be given out to nationals from those countries, therefore passport holders from those nations. And moreover, it would appear that that's going to be the case for at least the next 90 days, the next upcoming 90 days. So probably until sometime in March, that's going to remain the same. Now, here's the important thing to keep in mind. Also included in that executive order was apparently some language pertaining to not only issuance of visas from nationals of those countries, but also the possibility of entering the United States. So in theory, a national from one of those nations could have been issued a visa, let's say this past Monday, and would be traveling to the United States. It would appear that there's a possibility that U.S. Customs and Border Protection may be under new executive orders and regulations, which may require them to, at the very least, increase or place increased scrutiny on those people entering, or possibly not even allow them in at all. I have to say that we just don't know the full ramifications of these recent executive orders as of the time of this filming. It remains to be seen. But here's the point. if you are a national from one of these countries and you've been living in the United States and you have a green card even in the United States and visa status in the United States, it may not be wise to leave the United States at this time. While inside the United States, certain constitutional protections are going to apply, and having already been vetted and allowed to enter the United States, you've sort of jumped through the hurdles and you're there already. In a way, you're sort of across the finish line if you're a national from one of these countries. But as I was reading in some articles today, you know, there's a question, and it's a good one. What happens if I'm, say, an Iraqi national, I have a green card in the United States, and I want to take a visit down to Mexico, or I want to travel to Canada? What should I do? My advice would be don't go. Notwithstanding your green card status and your lawful permanent residence inside the United States, in essence, your situation is sort of reset, at least from the perspective of U.S. Customs and Border Protection, because upon leaving, again, if you try to come back in, you're going to be sort of re-vetted when coming back in. So this is a really touch-and-go issue at this point, but those nationals who are impacted directly by this recent ban, it's probably not a wise idea to leave the United States, at least until there's some clarification with how this is going to actually operate in practice. Another thing to keep in mind is Trump has now signed another executive order which stipulates that increased vetting procedures will be utilized and will be implemented when screening applicants for U.S. immigration benefits abroad. There seemed to be, from the reading that I was doing, and this is mere speculation at this time, but there seemed to be mostly a concentration of that scrutiny, there was going to be a concentration of scrutiny placed on nationals, perhaps in the future from these countries mentioned in the so-called ban that's just gone into effect, as well as probably other nations that would appear to have large populations of those who are practicing the religion of Islam. I can't say for certain. In the articles and the information I've read with respect to these recent executive orders, as well as the segments of the executive orders themselves, it's hard to say how this is ultimately going to shake out. That being said, I think it is a fairly sound conclusion to probably go ahead and assume that the U.S. immigration process probably generally is going to be perhaps more difficult in the months and years ahead, or at least in the weeks and months ahead, as a result of executive orders which are essentially going to create increasingly scrutinizing vetting procedures on those seeking U.S. immigration benefits. From my understanding, such increased scrutiny is going to be placed only on certain regions, but again, that's mere speculation, and I can't really tell how this is going to overall impact the situation. It's clear that as far as the visa bans go, that is only going to apply to those countries I mentioned before. But as far as this increased scrutiny, it's rather difficult to say exactly the extent and exactly sort of the depth of this increased scrutiny because it hasn't been implemented yet. And it's also difficult to say exactly how this is going to impact those seeking visas around the world. Thailand being a predominantly Buddhist country, I'm assuming that it is not going, or at least in the short term, that these recent executive orders are not really intended for this region or for the nation. But that being said, the overall change in complexion of the scrutiny process, or of the so-called, or basically the due diligence process that the Department of State is going to undertake before issuing a U.S. visa, it's difficult to say how that's going to be how that's going to be impacted by the recent changes that have been promulgated through these recent executive orders. That being said, we'll try to keep you posted as quickly as we can with respect to changes in the U.S. immigration process, but it should be noted that at least for the foreseeable future, I think it's fairly safe to say that there's probably going to be some changes with respect to U.S. immigration matters moving forward.